everyone, and welcome to this weekend edition of the discursive program Global Insight on your Pan-African television. For you, Media Africa, today we continue to talk Africa-Russia cooperation at this time around, not military cooperation, but now looking at how the Russian Federation and African states can cooperate fully in the energy sector in line to boosting Africa's industrialization drive. The era of shifting alliances has opened up a larger scope for Africa to explore and also exploit to fast-track its industrialization drive and development. The segment of Global Insight therefore focuses on prospects for Africa-Russia cooperation in the energy sector as we witness emerging partnerships aimed at addressing the continent's critical energy deficit. It becomes clear that Africa is at a pivotal moment in her journey towards industrialization. Over 645 million Africans are still lacking access to electricity, as reported by the African Development Bank in 2018, of course, bringing the urgency for innovative solutions, of course, which has never been this greater. How can powering Africa's future, and of course, what opportunities lie ahead for Russia-Africa cooperation in the energy market? Russia's State Duma has given priority to Africa-Russia energy ties. The Parliament on Thursday, July 25, 2024, held a roundtable strategic session on legislative support for economic cooperation with African states in the field of energy on the prospects for joint work between Russia and African countries. The roundtable indicated a promising direction for collaboration, highlighting, of course, Russia's commitment to establishing nuclear and renewable energy projects across African nations. Given Africa's vast energy resources spanning solar, wind, hydro, and geothermal resources, this cooperation stands not only as a pathway to meet immediate electricity needs, but also as a critical driver for sustainable economic growth. So on today's edition of Global Insight, we are going to explore the intricate relationship between energy access and industrialization in Africa, considering the diverse challenges faced by both sides and opportunities that lie ahead. And of course, with a panel of experts, we're going to understand or to answer very pertinent questions that relate to facelifting the energy sector of the African continent and how its relationship, or Africa's relationship with the Russian Federation can bring about a new phase in the energy sector in Africa. Thank you again. This is Global Insight. Stay tuned. Africa-Russia Energy Cooperation, is it a precursor for Africa's industrialization? Welcome once more, ladies and gentlemen. Time for us to uncover the panel of experts. And of course, we start off in Russia with YULIA BERG, political scientist, founder, GLOBUS Expert Club, joining us from Moscow this day. Hello to you, YULIA BERG, and thanks for honoring today's rendezvous.
Hello, happy to join you today.
It's always a pleasure, and of course looking forward to analyzing this very pertinent issue, aspect of industrialization, and how the cooperation between the Russian Federation and Africa can help to fast-track the continent's industrialization drive. Let's of course stay in Russia with Frank YOSSA, Head of Business Development. Hello to you, Frank, and thank you for honoring our rendezvous this day.
Hi, BERI. Thank you for having me, and thank you for inviting the Cameroon diaspora, on behalf of the African diaspora, to this platform today and exchanging about the energy cooperation between Africa and Russia. I'm here to represent Mr. Luiguen, who is the president of the Cameroonian diaspora in Russia, and who actually was part of the team that assisted to at the Duma. A few days ago, there was a roundtable over there about this very topic. So I will just be emphasizing on those key resolutions which they made, and they came together with it during that roundtable. Hi, Yulia. Thank you to see you too.
Okay, which is of course very imperative for talking about the African agenda. It is imperative that Africans actually give their voice to what is affecting the continent. And we also acknowledge the presence of JULIUS KEWIR TANGKA, PhD, Renewable Energy Laboratory, University of Chang in the Republic of Cameroon. Thank you, sir, for honoring our invitation this day. Hello, Mr. KEWIR, can you hear me? Okay, just to note that we are also joined by MOBLEY, a journalist and a historian. If you're there already, you're most welcome to the program this day.
Good morning.
Looking forward to having a fruitful discussion with you all. Let's kick off with YULIA BERG. Of course, on Thursday, July 25th, the State Duma in Russia held a strategic roundtable discussing further on how the African continent and the Russian Federation can better collaborate in the sphere of energy. I would love to have a holistic perspective patterning this strategic roundtable, and of course what prospects it presents for both Russia and African states.
Yes, thank you for the question. So starting today's discussion on Russia-Africa's cooperation in energy sector and the prospects that it opens up, I would like to mention that the reason why the discussion was even initiated is that the African-Russian Energy Association that has been operating in that area since 2019 was looking at the opportunities. And on the one hand, it was very much clear that cooperation in energy is essential, and I would even say fundamental, for the Russia-Africa ties, because on the one hand, the energy sector is in high demand in Africa. And by that I mean that quite a lot of people, which is around 70% of the population of sub-Saharan Africa and 40% of the overall population, do not have the regular access. But this is not the only thing. I think one of the key reasons for this cooperation to be very timely right now is that many countries put at the top of their agenda development of their industrial potential and production, and it means that energy would be essential. So you cannot be talking about production without having stable and powerful access to energy. So this is the reason. From, let's say, the African side and from the Russian side, there is the necessary expertise, and moreover, there is an explicit experience of the Russian Federation and even more of the experience of the Soviet Union, which the Russian Federation has inherited and has been keeping, right? Experience in not only creating energy infrastructure, but in working on complex projects. But I think we will be going deeper into that a bit later into the program. So the very reason for the roundtable to take place was that once the Russian companies started relaunching their projects and working on new projects in Africa, they came to realize that there are still some barriers that can be eliminated just by using the force of the legislative body of the Russian Federation, which is the State Duma. So the roundtable that was held on on July 25, and that was initiated by the Russia-Africa Energy Association and the Expert Council of the Russian Duma, headed by Mr. Babakov. So the reason was to make sure that from the Russian side the barriers no longer exist, and that the way for the companies is open to go and talk and implement projects. So what is important to mention at the very beginning is that the event was unique, as it gathered not just legislators, members of parliament, but also representatives of the relevant ministries, the Ministry of Energy, the Ministry of Trade, the Ministry of Industry, and at the same time companies, and at the same time the academic community, experts, and experts had decades of experience on the African continent. So all of them were present at the very same table. They had an opportunity to express their opinion, to provide their input. And I think this kind of a holistic approach, even for the conversation on this, is essential. And at the same time, even though the key focus of attention was the problems and barriers that exist from the Russian side, at the same time, active participation of the African partners was essential, because this is the only way to ensure that the projects would be realistic, that they would be matching the actual demand, and that they're even welcomed at the continent.
Thank you so much for that. With you, Frank, YOSSA, we are talking about the energy sector, and we know in the preamble we asked the question how we can power Africa's future, and what the opportunities that lie ahead as far as the Russia-Africa Energy Corporation is concerned. So what do you think are the prospects for Africa, given this milestone taken by the State Duma to discuss this very imperative sector, the energy sector, like a driving force to Africa's total industrialization drive?
Thank you, BERI. Thank you. That's actually a very good question. Here I will speak as an investment analyst. In Africa right now, we have one of the major problems is access to energy, to electricity. Some company cannot function like 24 hours because they lack energy, and some businesses cannot also run efficiently because of lack of energy. I will go back to the to 2 years ago when we had this Russian company, Rosatom, which is actually a nuclear company, but they have built some station in Egypt, and they also built in South Africa. This I will call it an agency because it's Russian. It's Rosatom. It means Russian Atomic Agency. So they provide energy to those countries, to Egypt, which is actually one of the great export of energy right now in the North Africa. So Russia has a great experience based on the resources that he has as a producer of petroleum, coal, and all type of energy. So we believe that with the help of Russia, I mean, with this such corporation, African countries, we have our, let's say, African businesses, might have access, because I have to put it in the future and also as in the probability way, might have access to 24 hours energy. Having access to 24 hours energy means boosting the production, boosting the business, and also that's the only way we can be effectively competitive on the market. If a country cannot produce electricity or energy for a company or for businesses, we might not be able to compete at the trade level. So it's way more necessary. Now, the part that Russia can play here is like to transfer of technology. They are one of the great nation when it's coming in terms of when it's coming to energy. They are the leader in that topic. Definitely, we African country or we African can learn something from them. In this term of learning, that will be also bringing try to reduce the gap between on the I will call that savoir-faire, yeah, that's a way of reducing the gap, to having the engineer to bring some innovative way of knowledge, cooperation, in order to boost our economy, in order to boost our competitiveness based on the type of energy we need for our industry.
Thank you for that, Frank. Coming to you, Dr. KEWIR, you are an energy expert, and of course, we are trying to focus on how Africa can harness its energy resources, taking advantage of its, energy cooperation with the Russian Federation. While talking about the energy cooperation, it is also imperative to identify the energy sources available in Africa that can be harnessed through this cooperation to redefine Africa's energy needs and its trajectory in a contemporary society.
Okay, thank you very much. Are you getting me?
Yes, sir, I can hear you. Oh, unfortunately, I cannot hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry, issues with my internet connection. Are you getting me now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You can go on with your contribution.
Okay, thank you so much. As I was saying, thank you for the invitation. As I was saying,
we'll come back to you, Dr. KEWIR, subsequently. Let's get the viewpoint of Author MOBLEY. Of course, journalist and historian pertaining the prospects for renewable energy in Africa, and of course how we can use the Russia-Africa cooperation to solve some of the energy crisis in Africa. We know that of recent, load shedding has been a problem, particularly in South Africa, one of Africa's giant economies. With this new cooperation, how feasible or what are the prospects of redefining the Africa's energy sector, and also what are the prospects for the Russian Federation? Your own perspective for Author MOBLEY.
Well, good morning and thank you. I'm having a little bit of a problem with my video, and we'll correct that in just a moment. But I think that the problems, particularly involving Russia, have to be put in certainly into context internationally. Russia recently, through its Nord Stream pipeline project, was supplying much of the energy needs to not only Eastern Europe, but Western Europe as well, through that system. The U.S., in its own calculations, decided that pipeline needed to be destroyed, and they actually destroyed the Nord Stream pipeline. The President of the United States, presently Joe Biden, has almost admitted that the U.S. destroyed that pipeline, severed that pipeline by essentially sabotage, blowing it up, and it talked in advance about destroying that pipeline. The attitude of the United States as an energy partner for Africa has a history steeped in colonial ideas about the ownership of energy, the ownership of infrastructure, the ownership of its possibility to disseminate goodwill and energy in Africa as well. We all know what happened with the French and what they did in early days in places like Guinea, where there was a refusal from the beginning of the African countries to allow for a continued exploitation of Africa, and Guinea said we will not participate in the pact for the continuation of the colonization of Africa, and just for refusing to not go along with that pact for the continuation of colonialism in Africa, Guinea's infrastructure was sabotaged. All of its systems were sabotaged. And that kind of activity has really defined the relationship between the West and Africa. So I think that the non-aligned approach from the standpoint of African nations and African people to give others the opportunity to work in Africa, work in cooperation with Africa to develop out the systems of energy that will work best for Africa are strategically important, vitally important at this point. So the development of those systems is imperative. I will let you go to one of your other panelists, if that's possible. I know that you had one attempting to communicate while I fix my video problem here.
Thank you for that, MOBLEY. Let me come back to you, YULIA. Russia is the world's fourth largest electricity producer, and also referred to as an energy superpower. We are equally aware that there is energy deficiency in Africa. So let's look at how Russia can use the energy prowess to solve the Africa's energy crisis in this, of course, the multipolar world and in a period of shifting alliances.
Well, I think answering your question, it is important to say that the Russian Federation has become the energy superpower and probably the only country that is capable of ensuring durable and quite cheap technologies, or I should say relatively cheap, specifically because industrialization of the Soviet Union back then was happening at a very accelerated pace. So around 100 years ago, we had pretty much the same situation when a lot of the population of the country didn't have access to electricity, but the situation was troubled by very complicated weather conditions. And here I'm talking about the harsh winters and the fact that, let's say, from 7 to 8 months per year, most of the regions of the country are, the land is basically covered with ice and snow. So we're dealing with extreme temperatures that differ from -40, -50 degrees to 30, 40 degrees Celsius, right? And back then, the success of electrification was ensured by the complex approach that was used. So it meant that, for example, if there were some coal mines, and we see a lot of such examples in Siberia, at the Ural Mountains region, and in Donbass as well. So, for instance, there was a coal mine, and then the strategic plan that was being implemented, or development plan for the region, implied that there would be a mine, there would be an energy plant that would be ensuring, in the first place, the needs of the industrial area. Then there were factories being created, and then since this implied many jobs being created and many people working on those factories and energy plants and mines, etc., housing and social infrastructure, because when we talk about big energy projects, of course, households cannot ensure enough of capacities. And when we talk about large-scale energy plants, especially nuclear ones, what is needed for them to function properly is stable load, right? To ensure the stable load, household would never be enough. So for that, you need industrial capacities and factories that operate on a stable basis. And here we come to the conclusion that the only way to ensure actual development is to come up with a holistic, complex approach. Because if you're talking about production has to have stable demand for the product, the goods that come out of those factories, let's say. And for that, you need trade partners, or you need to be actively using the regional, or let's say the continental market. So you cannot just build a nuclear plant, because it's just not going to function. And unlike some other types of energy like renewable solar, that you can basically work on the actual load and the capacity, that can be something variable, right? Sure. Nuclear imply a bit different approach itself. So, in brief, answering your question, what is valuable in terms of the Russian technology is that the complex approach and the capability of working in very difficult circumstances, including weather circumstances, etc. On the one hand, and on the other hand, having a variety of approaches and having a variety of technologies that could be used is definitely creating additional benefits for the African countries. And also, if you look back at the history, especially if you take a closer look at 60s and 70s, there has been already quite a lot of cooperation in terms of science, education. Quite a lot of African specialists were coming to Russia to study engineering in the energy sector. Quite a lot of Russian specialists were working in Africa, so there is already the background, and there is already some foundation that was laid decades ago, and you can upgrade and build on that as well.
Indeed, capitalizing on the available opportunities to fast-track Africa's industrialization drive. Given all you highlighted earlier on, Frank, we want to analyze the implications of, the energy cooperation between Africa and Russia in contemporary society, especially in the sphere of driving real industrialization in Africa.
Thank you, BERI. So I would like to go by the statistics. Right now, as you just said, Russia is the fourth producer of energy in the world. So it has experience, it has the quantity, and has the quality. We agree on that. Now, as an African, what do we need? What can we improve the state of our energy consumption and energy production? Let me just go with the statistics here. Right now, in the whole Africa, the electricity consumption per capita is just 90%, only 90%. Energy intensity of economy is just 129% from 2000 to 2023. And we have a very negative percent on renewable energy. We have also the coal production. We sometimes we listen from the West and from other grid power that coal production has an effect on the nature. Yes, it might be great, but do coal is still necessary for African country to boost their access to energy? I think yes. So African countries should actually maximize on the production of coal, which they have. And the main difficulty here is access to the technology, access to equipment, access to, as I said, to the technique on doing that. And this where the Russian can step up, right? Just to bring that technical part, that technology, that equipment that we need. We have the raw resources. We definitely have the raw resources, but what we are missing is the technology. Maybe they agree some policy, because some of our country, we have to agree on that. We should not just blame other people or what happened to us, but we also have to be we also learn to take responsibility and be accountable of the level where we are. So if the head of state put in place some great policy in order to boost their energy production. That will be a step ahead to have a green economy. Today, we understand about the COP this, the price of CO. We have to forget about the coal. No, Africa cannot, as we speak now, the main source of energy for Africa is the coal energy produced from the coal, and hydroelectric energy. That's the main source of energy right now.
Yeah.
So we can focus on that, and focus on that means getting partners who's going to help us on that level. The West, the greater power right now, want to forget about the coal. Let me also say something. Russia, as a power also, coal is actually 80%. Allow me to be sure. Coal is 80% of the energy production in Russia.
Yeah.
So Russia also still use coal. We can do that in Africa. And based on what we have been doing here, the president of the diaspora, the African diaspora in Russia is trying to put in place connection network in order to bring entrepreneur or business people in the level of energy to match up with other stakeholders in Russia, in order to have a symbiosis, to have that business environment where the producer here can come, bring the technology, bring also the equipment in order to foster our economy. Without energy, we cannot have a great and competitive economy. Now, sometimes we have issue of connection. You cannot have a 24% access to internet because you have a low level of low access to electricity. How can we overcome that? To be able to compete with China, you must have 24%. You must have access to energy 24%, to 24 hours 7. Because in China, they always have energy. You cannot pretend that you will compete with other people or you will be part of the global market when you cannot have access to the basic element of competition, which is energy. So for us, we have to identify what is the main source of energy that we need. We have that, is a coal, is a hydro energy, and maybe we can also have maybe solar energy. We definitely need also solar energy. Here we have a professor at University Chang, one of the greatest universities in Cameroon. He will tell us more about how they are planning to bring up new scientists on that level. And the main steps for us is to push, to look for partners, to look for people, to look for stakeholders that can give us the technique, the instrument how to get to produce our own energy, and that's where Russia step up. They've been doing that with Egypt through the agency called Rosatom. In Cameroon, we have one Russian company who has actually produced petroleum for energy. I think it's called Lukoil. Lukoil is based in Cameroon, if I'm not mistaken. And there was some question about Gazprom also to be part of the market in Cameroon. So we need a partner that can give us access to the main technology. That's what we need. Basically, Russian can be that missing puzzle of our energy development. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Let me go back to Dr. KEWIR, hoping that all will be well now. We are looking at the availability or the available resources, energy sources that African nations can harness to be able to drive its economy. And of course, we are looking at how the role of energy in facelifting the economic trajectory of African states. What are those available energy sources which you think can be harnessed in today's world, sir, to redefine Africa's economic trajectory? Dr. KEWIR? This question is directed to you, Julius KEWIR.
Thank you.
We're looking.
getting me now? Are you getting me? Getting me now?
Yes, sir.
I'm on the air. Are you getting me now?
Sure, sir. Sure.
Okay, thank you. I'm very sorry about all the inconveniences due to power failure here, internet connection and everything. Thank you very much for this invitation. I'm highly honored to speak in this panel. Yes, my contribution is that Africa has natural resources, and as regards exportation of energy from Russia to Africa, I don't see that feasibility, but I think Russia can do a lot in terms of infrastructure and equipment. Russia can help Africa in infrastructure and equipment. For instance, we have a very high Congo, Cameroon and Congo alone can supply about more than 60% of world electricity. But the problem is through hydro. The problem is infrastructure and technology. As far as energy is concerned, I want to remind all of us that there is very little to invent. Most of the inventions that are coming nowadays are just to make perfect what already existed more than 100 years ago. I've heard talks here about coal. Perhaps we should remind ourselves that the world is moving towards a zero coal energy economy. Zero carbon. Coal is very, very toxic to the environment. And those African countries that are using coal, like South Africa, are already having a lot of problem with environmentalists. Some people in East of Africa are also trying to get coal. And I think there has been demonstrations because people did not want coal. So we have solar and we have hydro energy. And abundant solar, hydro, and biomass. Biomass, again, because Africa has a very high potential of biomass. The Congo forest, is one of the largest forest reserves in the world with a very high biomass potential which can be sustainably harnessed. Now, what we need here is technology. We equally need technology in waste to energy. There are so many African countries now that are trying the waste to energy program, like using of urban and municipal waste to convert it to energy. I see Ethiopia has started, a few African countries, just like they are doing in Europe. So we have a lot of energy resources here in Africa. And what Russia can do can be to export technology that will consume the energy resources that we have. Transformers, we need power line distributions, we need power, energy, transport facilities, all the infrastructure that goes with energy transport. We equally need solar because we have some of very good solar radiation in the Sahel region, in the Sahara Desert. Very little surface area can provide all of the electricity needed in Europe. So we have these potentials, but I think, as I said, the problem we have is the infrastructure. And if we could get infrastructure, then it will help us to develop and to consume these energy resources. I know that Russia is a major energy exporter in Europe, exporting gas, petroleum, and coal. But I don't see Russia exporting these raw materials to Africa because Africa is sitting on a bedrock of gold mines of renewable energy resources. Another thing that we have which can be easily exploited here in Africa is biofuels. Biofuels are, the potentials in biofuels are found everywhere. We have oleaginous crops that could be converted to biodiesel with a very simple esterification process. These crops are found all over Africa. I would take, for instance, a crop like castor oil. Castor oil grows from South Africa to Cairo, from Cape to Cairo. That is crossing all of Africa. If you go to Addis Ababa, castor oil is the main shrub that is growing in the whole town. It is growing in Morocco, Algeria, everywhere, growing in the desert. And very few or no African country is making good use of this oil. But if they tell you that India sells castor oil to the United States for about $10 million every year, you will not believe. So this castor oil, just like many other oleaginous crops found in Africa, can be domesticated and used to produce power. We are talking about energy and power now on the eve of the urge for clean energies to stop global warming. So whatever solution we are proposing, we should be proposing something that is sustainable, that a country will not start and then tomorrow they will run into problems because we are all looking for cutting up of carbon emissions. So that is the contribution I can make for now by saying that Africa has a lot of renewable energy potentials. We have minerals, we have so many things, and what is lacking is the infrastructure, the equipment to convert this energy into power and to transport it to wherever it is needed. We need the infrastructure. We equally need routes, because the transport of energy, equipment, and infrastructure needs motorable routes. So many towns and cities and countries in Africa, the route network does not permit the free distribution of products. So that can be a major problem. How do you transport transformers to an enclave, to a village where there is no route? How do you transport even natural gas, which so many African countries have, to the point of consumption we do not have? So for now, that is what I can say, that we need equipment. I don't see Russia exporting energy to Africa, but I can see Russia exporting infrastructure, exporting equipment for the conversion of energy into power and for distribution. Maybe I will hold on for now, hoping that you have followed me right to this age.
Dr. KEWIR, thank you for that. Listening to you, we come to bring the place of the major stakeholders, both from Africa and the Russian Federation, in ensuring that the energy cooperation is given another dimension. Now, coming back to you, Dr. MOBLEY, how can major stakeholders from both Africa and Russia drive initiatives that will actually reduce bureaucratic barriers and enhance investment fluidity, and also, ultimately transform potential into reality, aligning with what Dr. KEWIR just highlighted right now?
Thank you. It's a very good question, and Dr. KEWIR's analysis was, I think, very helpful to the conversation. Africa has a unique position and opportunity to transform its energy grid, its energy distribution systems, which are virtually non-existent at this point, to develop something that would be unique in the world. Africa's requirements for fuel and energy are certainly as voluminous and demanding as China's is. I mean, Africa has 1.4 billion people on the continent, and that is comparable to India and China. And the energy needs are, of course, commensurate. What Africa's advantage is that Africa has not developed to the point where it causes itself the same problems that we see and find in many of these other industrialized countries, including here in the United States, for that matter. So Africa, again, has a unique position and opportunity to develop its clean energy structure and base in a way that no other continent has been able to do, with the access that we have today to modern technology to create the delivery systems that will enable Africa to distribute that energy production as far as it possibly can to reach the many users that are certainly requiring energy. So, for example, we've talked about coal as being certainly a dirty source of energy, and it is. There are some technologies that are available to scrub and clean the smokestacks that would diminish some of the pollution that coal emits. But anytime you're burning fossil fuels, whether it's in a car or it's in a coal fire plant, you're going to emit a lot of pollutants. And Africa is such a beautiful place. Africa is such a massive land area that it really needs a strategic plan for how it will distribute energy going forward, and doing so in a way that is appreciative of the African environment. I think that Africa, like I said, uniquely has that opportunity to move forward. If you've been to places in Russia and the United States comparably, where there have been a lot of conservation efforts to make sure that energy does not trample down the environmental quality of those countries. Both Russia and the U.S. have suffered because of how their energy systems have developed. It's taken years to do the kinds of destruction in Europe and America has happened, decades to destroy the infrastructure and the just the environment in those countries. Deforestation has happened throughout Europe to an extreme point, and deforestation has happened in America to an extreme degree, where trees have been leveled, and once vital areas of just having that kind of oxygenating, creating system has been destroyed. So what we need to do in Africa is really look at what kinds of environmental priorities need to be established, and they need to be done on a regional basis, on a continental basis, because the biggest enemy of Africa is still balkanization and the fact that Africa is cut up into so many pieces that you can, have a great energy grid in Ghana and a terrible energy grid in next door in Benin or Togo. Is really a challenge when you have sources of that same energy being river systems for hydroelectric power that can be very dynamic. Decades and decades ago, Africa's leaders saw the expansive potential for power to be developed. Congolese River. The Congolese River alone can light the entire, just through hydroelectric potential, can light the entire continent for hundreds of years. It has massive hydroelectric potential. But in harnessing that energy, you want to be careful not to destroy habitat, not to destroy the landscape, not to essentially devour the entire Congo basin of its essential resources of trees and botanicals that are important for other reasons. They're important for medicines and naturally being able to cure and eradicate and prevent diseases. So it does take a macro approach, but it also takes a continental approach. And the only challenge that I can see is the willingness for Africans to collectively work together to bring about a practical structure of energy use, but at the same time, utilizing its strategic partnerships with China and Russia to assist in that development. They can't come in piecemeal and try to just develop the system in Nigeria and just supply power to the people in Nigeria or just the people in Ghana for that matter. You have to have the capability to regionalize energy distribution and production so that it flows to regions and it creates a durable, forward-thinking system that takes all of Africa into consideration, not just those parts that happen to have some access to river systems, whether they be the Niger or they be, the Congolese River or the Nile or the Limpopo or Zambezi. All of these river sources are being used currently for hydro, but the efforts of a lot of the colonial regimes of the past have been to completely avoid the distribution systems that are necessary so that that power and that progress in power development can make it to some of the more remote areas that need power and are going to require it moving forward. So these are just some of the problems and challenges that we see for the development of African resources and the ability to really electrify the entire continent as opposed to having a patchwork that is unsuccessful and unsustainable.
Indeed, the challenge is colossal, but then we want to use this platform to analyze on how we can actually mitigate some of the impediment to the full energy distribution even in the suburbs of the African continent. Coming back to you, YULIA, while Dr. KEWIR was talking earlier on, he made mention of certain, points which are of utmost importance. When during the first Russia-Africa summit, or after the first Russia-Africa summit, a lot was said about why Russia is coming to Africa. And today we are looking at energy deficiency in Africa and capitalizing on how, Africa's collaboration with the Russian Federation can help to solve some of these energy problems. So in your own perspective, what were the resolutions arrived at after the strategic meeting at the State Duma recently, as far as, bringing expertise or Russia's expertise to harnessing the energy sector in Africa, given that Africa already has what it takes to boost its energy level?
Well, I would like to support here the point made by Arthur just now, and this is exactly the thinking that we have been having for quite a while in terms of the need to have a strategy. And I would like to remind that back in 2019, during the first Russia-Africa summit, one of the important things that were presented during the event was the Africa 2040 strategy that was worked on jointly by experts from African countries and from Russia. And I think what was important and quite symbolic regarding that one is that the foresight sessions around the Africa 2040 strategy were taking place in Berlin. So the Berlin conference of the 19th century that divided Africa did not imply any kind of opinions being voiced by the Africans themselves. And around 200 years later, with the Russian and African experts, a joint vision was created, even though it was quite a high level. And so during the event on July 25 at the Russian State Duma, with participation of legislators, executive branch, and companies, as well as experts, what was important is that the resolution itself of the event that you can see happening at the moment on the screens, right? So the resolution implied one of the key points being the need to have a complex, holistic, strategic plan. So having such a plan, having such a strategy would allow to use the resources effectively, to make sure that the companies, the joint ventures that are being created, they're well thought through, that, you know, the businesses that are being created, they have the necessary energy supply, that it creates enough of jobs, that there is enough of educational capacities in order to synchronize the knowledge and the vision and the know-how and apply the best technologies available. So that is essential. At the moment, we have quite a limited presence of Russian companies, and here I would like to bring to your attention the fact that there are companies that operate at the moment, the Russian companies that operate at the moment in Africa, yet at the same time they even though there is quite a lot that they do, there is no, let's say, overall plan or vision that would allow them to be more effective and feel more comfortable. And at the same time, sometimes it's hard to find the strategies and development plans that some of the countries of the African continent want to have in mind, especially given the fact that up until recently, the vision itself or the opportunities that the African leaders had to promote their own vision were limited. And by this, I mean the colonial system that was being implemented. So the colonial powers such as France, especially, I would say specifically France, and the UK and the US, to a certain extent, they were not interested in Africa's development. They were, and still probably are, interested in Africa mostly as a source of resources that they extract and take out at the minimal price. And when we talk about the Russian Federation, this kind of a risk is eliminated by the fact that the Russian Federation itself has all those resources, starting from gold and diamonds all the way to rare earth materials. And even though Africa has much more to offer, still those are the resources that create real value. And going back to one of the previous points made during this program by my colleagues here, in terms of investment and in terms of lack of finance present at the continent in order to implement big infrastructure projects, I would like to make a reference to an article and to some of the data and stats. So the work on the strategy is currently run by the African Russian Energy Association, led by Andrei Gromov. So This is one of the articles that were published, and here on the 2 pages close by, you can see on the one hand the real value that Africa has in terms of its potential, and when you add the incredible human potential on top of that, and the growing middle class, the growing urban population, the developing universities and institutions, then you multiply the resources by, at least by 10. And on the other hand, you see a list of companies that do already operate and have the necessary experience. So joint strategy made by both Russian and African actors would ensure that an optimal approach is used, and money in terms of paper, in terms of digits, do not mean as much as the real value. So Africa has to, I suppose Africa has to know that it already has everything that is necessary in order to ensure its own development with the use of the best technologies available, best equipment available. And here, I'm happy to highlight the fact that the BRICS project is also creating additional opportunities, because China, India, the 2 big countries that are comparable in terms of population to the African continent, they also have a lot to offer. So Africa's, let's say, bargaining position in terms of how the continent would develop and who it would choose to cooperate and how is as good as it has never been before. Right? So the new mechanisms created in terms of financial systems, in terms of trade models, in terms of geopolitics and international cooperation at the moment are ensuring that this multipolar approach would be used for mutual benefit and with the mutual respect. So the strategy, once again, that was mentioned as one of the key points of the resolution implies exactly this: an open discussion, participation of real actors, participation of experts, and joint implementation that would help everyone to feel safe and would help everyone to make sure that their interests are secured.
It's about letting all the stakeholders actually enjoy from the available resources that will position countries, especially African countries, in the multipolar world. Frank, still from the perspective of an investor, as you highlighted, we know that to drive machineries or industries, there is need to have full energy supply. Now we are looking at the feasibility of using energy to solve Africa's economic challenges, and what parameters can African political stakeholders, because for anything to materialize, there is need for also a strong political will driven by leaders of the African continent under the auspices of the African Union. So how can we use or harness all of these to fast track or solve Africa's economic challenges? Hello, Frank.
Yeah, BERI, I'm here. I got the question perfectly, okay. And that's actually one of the main element of my PhD thesis that I'm writing right now. Hopefully by next year I will defend it and share it with some key stakeholders, as we call them. First of all, if you are aware of the last news from the African petroleum producer, there was set a bank, African Energy Bank, that was set 2 weeks ago, and the headquarters will be in Nigeria. That the bank has fundamental has as a fundamental to finance all the projects that concern petroleum production and also energy production in Africa. That's one of the great steps that the African countries, African president, let's put it that way, have taken forward the independence on energy production. That's basically wonderful. Also, I would like to acknowledge the point of Professor JULIUS. He said that Africa, Cameroon, and Congo themselves can export half of the energy necessary for this war. I agree. Definitely, that's 100%. Cameroon has the second biggest potential on energy production, hydro energy production in Africa. We can just capitalize on what we have. We can capitalize on what we have, and capitalizing on what we have is that making great step, making also trying to prioritize what comes first. Our issue today, or issue of our leaders, is that they oftentimes do not prioritize, do not do the balance between what is the priority right now and what's necessary right now. If they can come to that level of stating priorities, what our population needs, what do we need to be competitive? Are we emphasizing on it? Competitive. The world is becoming global, and we have to be competitive and not following.
Absolutely, yeah.
When you try to be competitive, you try to be independent by yourself and not dependent on other people. I'm not trying to say that we should not cooperate, no, but we should not depend. Also, it has been very long, and we African, young African leaders have to stop playing the blaming game, putting our failure on other people. Yes, there were kind of colonization, there were kind of slavery and whatever, but at this stage, we should not just be blaming others. We have our own responsibility. One of the facts is that in Nigeria right now, one of the businessmen, one of the richest men in the world, Aliko Dangote, he did something wonderful. He found some money, he had some capital, and he built the biggest refinery in Africa in order to produce, to refine oil made from Nigeria and give it to the Nigerian people, in order for them to access to energy. But we are seeing that the Nigerian government told the NPD are actually trying to boycott what Aliko Dangote has done. This is where we as Africans must bear our responsibility. If we don't do that, nobody's going to help us. Yes, we might have Russian friends who want to transmit, want to share the technology. That's beautiful, that's wonderful. YULIA has tried to have emphasis on that, and I've been assisting some meetings, I've been assisting some roundtable, where we also call on our friends to come, not just to come as a new type of colonizer, but as a partner. That's just this necessary. Coming as a partner, giving trading idea and trading equipment. So the world is becoming one. If in Cameroon, I'm talking most about Cameroon because I'm from Cameroon, and my PhD is actually about Cameroon.
Sure.
So this is the recent data that I'm having. So if we take like Cameroon, the country as Cameroon, the Douala where you might be right now, or Yaoundé, people don't have access to, let's say, 24 hours. What can we do? We have a professor who is actually doing research on renewable energy. We have solar energy in Douala. We can produce enough solar energy. Do we have enough engineers to set platform or to set camp where we can kind of boost solar production, solar energy production? We don't have that. Those doing business in Douala, in Yaoundé, in Boya, can they come together, put some finance, call on engineers around the world, from Russia, from UK, from India? Guys, you have the technology. We are in need. We call on you to come as a partner to work on this project. That's where the matter is today. That's what the matter is. We should not blame this here and there. No, we have to step up, do what is necessary for our people. Doing what is necessary for our people is also acknowledging the help of our partner and not just depending. We are not just running from one leader or to another one. No,
yeah.
We have to review. We try to be competitive at the biggest level, and being competitive is being able to standing by yourself.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. Just to remind us that this is Global Insight on For You Media Africa. How can Africa-Russia cooperation be a precursor to driving Africa's industrialization? Coming back to you, Dr. We're looking at, you quite highlighted earlier on that the Russian Federation, through its partnership with Africa, can help, ensure investment and transfer of technology that will help, harness the already available energy resources in Africa that will drive real, industrialization and give access to energy. So let's look at the ways in which, this Russia's technology and investment can even help address the energy shortages in both the short and long term.
Okay, thank you very much for that question. The first thing I want to caution us and to caution whoever is coming to Africa is to know that Africa is not a country. Africa is made up of about 52 countries and above, which means the approach in each country is different. So it is so difficult to discuss African problems thinking that you will discuss with one person or a few people and then you have a policy for the whole country. Even when you come to Cameroon, you will see that things have now changed. After the renewable energy law was enacted a few years back, it is now possible for investors to discuss with regional councils and to draw up energy plans that can hold in a region. If you go to Addis Ababa or you sit in Moscow and talk energy for Africa, it will be very difficult to penetrate the continent. You have to identify a country, look at their laws, come into it, and you find out where to penetrate. As I am saying, a typical example now is in Cameroon, where there is some decentralization. It is very slow, but at least it has paved the way for investors to come and talk directly with the grassroots. We have regions, we have 10 regions in Cameroon. I know that there are so many regions now that are looking for their independent energy projects. And I agree totally with what Frank Valery Yussa was saying. Politics has spoiled so many things in Africa. We have leaders who perhaps took over from the colonial masters, and perhaps the colonial masters told them that all the solutions they were going to have for many of their problems would still come from the colonial masters. So it has been so difficult for us to look inwards and to look for solutions. There are each of the African countries, we have engineers who are capable and who can work very well and bring solutions. But many of our African countries go directly to Europe and to the West to look for experts. Sometimes when these experts are here, they still rely on the local people to be able to succeed. They take the knowledge from the local people. Now, we know what it can take to electrify the whole country. But if you go to Europe, if you go to the West, they will bring their technology that they have and try to impose it. They will only suggest the technology that they have for you, which might not work. We have done a lot of research on energy in Cameroon, and right now, today, we can talk about biofuels with a lot of authority. A lot of authority, because biofuels are what exists in almost every community. Biofuels are environmentally friendly. They will curb deforestation. They will give employment to all our youth, because you imagine if all the fuels that we are using in the country has to come from biofuels, it means that everybody has to put their hand on deck
Yeah.
for vehicles, agriculture, industry, for all of these sectors to run. So we believe in biofuels, and that is why we think that any country that can accompany us with technology and infrastructure for this biofuel will go a very long way to solve the problem. And the administrative bottlenecks that we had in Cameroon have been cleared with this decentralization, where experts could come and talk directly to regional council, and the decisions there are faster. Because if you discuss with the government, you have to go through parliament, you have to go, and this can take years for laws to be enacted and things like that. So if you come to the regional council, you can very easily develop a project with the local engineers who know the terrain, who master it, and who know what is needed and when. Yeah. So my suggestion actually is that, as I said before, Russia should look at possibility of investing on infrastructure. Investing on infrastructure, taking into consideration the local experts who know what and what to do. Because sometimes we have people who come here and they are looking for business strategies. They are looking for where they can make money. We had a typical example here with electricity supply, where a company came and was boasting of a lot of profit. Meanwhile, the people were living in darkness. Now, it is not their concern whether people are in darkness or not. And sometimes we, at the local level, we feel that energy is a right. Energy is a right, which means you must supply energy to your people, whether they are able to pay or not. But if you work at the local level with investors, then you can be able to bring out possibilities of payback, possibilities of getting profit from your investment with the local people. Otherwise, you can sign big contracts with the government, and after that you are making a lot of money and nobody knows whether the people really have their electricity or not. So that is what we are suggesting, that we need infrastructure. As I earlier said, at our level, there is no invention again to be done. I'm just coming from the European Biomass Conference and Exhibition that took place in Paris. I looked at all the inventions that are coming up, and I saw that many of them are just coming to buttress or to modify a little bit what already existed more than 50 years ago. And these technologies are simple, and those are technologies we can easily develop and do. Unfortunately, these things are lying there, but investors who are coming with their technology that can give them profit without knowing the local reality. Okay. So my main suggestion is that let us work with the local technicians and find out what is good for them. Let us look at the laws of the country. There are some African countries, no matter how good the investment project you are bringing, it will not penetrate the country because the laws are not there, or the alignment that the country took politically is still binding on them. Perhaps they signed some contracts with some countries that before you light up any bulb, the technology must come from this particular country in the West, and they are still living in that bondage. So now, but many countries now have their laws that can facilitate investment. So I would suggest that the Russians should work in synergy with the local technicians who can make proposals on how to penetrate a country. Yeah. If you discuss only at the level of government, you might never be able to come in because they have laws. They are still living in bondage. So many things are tying them down. And as I was saying, Africa has all it takes to become energy independent. We can even export. So many countries can export. Cameroon alone can provide 45% of electricity in Africa. Cameroon and Congo can provide all the electricity in Africa. The Sahara Desert can provide all the electricity needed in Europe. But you will be surprised that from solar in the Sahara Desert, but you will be surprised that the energy that is being consumed in Europe is in the Sahara Desert is what was proposed by the investor, not what the local people that will make use of the resources that are available in the environment. So let us try to see how Africa can move forward by looking at country after country, case studies that can make you penetrate to the grassroots level.
Okay.
If you go perhaps to Nigeria, it might be difficult. They have their energy law. Perhaps, I know so many African countries that even talked about solar and said you can provide solar and sell it to the national grid, but they did not enact a law on feed-in tariffs. And once feed-in tariffs have not been declared, just like in Cameroon, it means you cannot even invest, because an investor who is coming in will be knowing that if I produce 1 kilowatt of electricity and the national electricity grid is being sold at maybe almost 10 euro cents or 10 euro cents per kilowatt, how much am I going to sell my own to the government?
Yeah.
Now, if you produce 10 euro cents and government asks you to sell for 3 cents, how much are you going to get at the end of the day? You are going to be selling at a loss.
Yeah.
So until that law is enacted, you cannot even proceed. And to bring out a law, it takes a very long time.
Indeed.
But now, as in Cameroon, we have an advantage is that there is decentralization. Each region, most of the regions are looking for ways and to come in and go and meet a regional council president. It is as easy as anything. It is not like booking audience with the prime minister or booking audience with the minister and so on. It is just by telephone call, and the next day you are talking serious business. And then we look, is it build, operate, and transfer? It's possible. Even if the region cannot sell to the national grid, they can use the electricity, try to make money from it for the development of the region. So Russia should look at each country and not talk so much about Africa, because there's no country that is Africa. So many countries in Africa are still living in bondage, colonial bondage, and very few are coming out of it. Some of the laws conflict with the laws of other countries. That is what, so they should be focused and go to the particular country and go to the particular grassroots and look at how they can start from there.
Okay.
We in Cameroon need pilot plants. Yes, we need pilot plants. In the University of Chang, we have been trying to find collaborators with whom we can build a pilot plant to run the university with biofuel. Because Africans are people who believe when they see. If we can run the university with biofuel produced in the university farm, that is from castor oil and jatropha, and I think there are pilot plants in Burkina and in Mali. If you can do that and prove to the other regions that this is something that is working, before long, you will see that so many other regions and then countries and neighbors will come into it and they will believe. These are sustainable projects, but the technology and the equipment are needed. We can do something locally, but not yet at the level that can cover the whole country.
All right.
So that's what I can say for now.
Brilliant. Thank you, sir. And listening to you keenly, want to elaborate more on some existing laws and how these laws are actually impeding the, energy laws to be precise. And that is what I want you, I wish that you elaborate more on ultimately the bureaucracy and the existing energy laws in Africa and how these are actually not helping in, to define that clear trajectory, especially as, foreign direct investment in the energy sector is concerned, particularly in line with Russia-Africa Energy Corporation.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Were you coming to me?
Sure, Mobley.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Certainly, balkanization is the enemy of African progress. We tend to think of 54, 56 countries as being a strength or a virtue of Africa when we realize that that's the very definition of colonialism. Colonizers created 54, 56 countries in Africa, and that balkanization is still the impediment because you have 56 different countries making policy, making laws, making rules, so that what you will always have in Africa is one illuminated small country in the middle of the entire Southern Africa region and have darkness in neighboring countries because you can't cross those lines into a neighboring country, even though the source of energy might be right there on the border, so that the distribution should be thought of in a different way. It absolutely has to be regional. Take, for example, what's going on in the United States. Just a couple of weeks ago, we had a major hurricane in the Gulf that hit the Texas area. Lights, electricity was out in that area for it's been weeks now, and still electric power has not been restored to the area. The reason that happens is because Texas has its own separate grid. You might remember a year or two ago, there was, in the middle of winter, a very devastating freeze, and Texas had actual death from people freezing because the grid in Texas was not connected with the grids in the western United States and the grid in the eastern United States. There are essentially three grids in the entire U.S. Population structure. There's a western grid, there's an eastern grid, and then there's a Texas grid. So when Texas chooses to isolate itself and create its own grid and its own power companies, then it doesn't allow for the communication of energy from the two more strategic grids in the country to trade power with the Texas system. And that's just a microcosm of what is going on and what is potentially going to happen in Africa if we continue down this road of localization, of power utilization, and of distribution of power, and also production. We really have to get in Africa to a system where we realize that our power is in unification. It is going, the power is in strategically going back to a one Africa. If we could ever get to a one Africa policy, it would be the greatest advent of a scenario that would be so vital and so helpful to the entire continent of Africa that it would just be amazing. We're talking about in the Sahara, Europe, trying to put solar panels in a large enough footprint in Africa to supply power to Europe. What about supplying power to Africa? Africa has to prioritize its own energy needs before it looks at or can't afford to look at, because people are dying. Darkness and non-electrification means that you have poverty. You have really the loss of life in many of those situations. You can't build hospitals. You can't build the infrastructure necessary so that people can operate during 50% of any day part, which is at night. You've got night, so you need to, you can illuminate in those areas. The large, and this is the last thing I will say is this. The largest countries in the world, whether you're talking about Russia or you're talking about China or you're talking about Canada or you're talking about Australia, those are the most powerful countries in the world. And they're powerful because they are a united land mass. They have a large land mass. Africa has to get away from this notion of breaking up into smaller countries to create smaller land masses that can't be productive to the country next door, particularly in energy.
Africa's integration will solve the many problems that the continent is facing, even in the energy sector. We are almost rounding off with the program, so we'll be looking at the way forward. I think each speaker will be given 2 minutes or so to conclude. Yulia, you talked earlier on about the State Duma bringing forth and other stakeholders from Africa a complex and holistic strategic plan to be able to fast-track this energy cooperation. Given what has been highlighted, particularly by Dr. KEWIR, what do you think are those components that can make up these, complex, holistic strategy that will provide, energy solutions, taking, the environment as a case study and applying what is feasible for the African continent?
Well, I absolutely agree, and I'm very happy that this point was also made by Mr. TANGKA. So Julius TANGKA was just talking about the fact that you need to know the situation on the ground. You need to communicate with technicians, with experts that have the relevant expertise in order to implement projects, because in many cases just intergovernmental negotiations alone, they do not really consider the situation on the ground. So a plan that is made regardless or ignoring the actual situation on the ground would never be as realistic as the so-called grassroots, right? So I'm very happy to know that here we have the very same vision, both from the Russian side and the African side, and I think that this is one of the key components. But if we're talking about the magnitude of, let's say, development, that energy infrastructure being one of the fundamental ingredients could ensure, we should understand that it's not just electricity itself, but it's, production, it's about security, it's about social opportunities, it's about new opportunities for education and everything else, because energy provides connectivity, energy provides access to internet, and access to internet is essential to ensure that people in rural areas, for example, can be connected to the world, that they can be getting online education, they can be getting online jobs, online professions, they can be, making their career using the opportunities that the modern day IT technologies provide. So energy is absolutely fundamental for many other industries and many other aspects of a state development. So this is how it should be looked at holistically. And just to give you an example in terms of the possible, let's say, magnitude in terms of jobs and in terms of impact over many other aspects of life, I would like to mention the Aswan hydroelectric plant, which was and still is the biggest one on the continent, located in Egypt. So there were several attempts to approach that very area in terms of creation of a hydroelectric plant. And then the project was actually built in cooperation of Egypt and the Soviet Union. And it implied providing relevant education, given professional skills, and providing education in many different aspects for 1 million people. Just imagine the numbers. So all of those people were working at the hydroelectric plant. So this is the magnitude, and they were taking part in building it, in engineering, and all those processes. So one energy project created around 1 million of jobs just directly. And when you talk about indirect impact in terms of opportunities that it creates for the people that live around it, work at related or even unrelated facilities, it means a lot. And when you talk about some of the other topical issues that were also mentioned by the experts here, so there are simple stats that show that having light in the street reduces crime rates tremendously. So when you have street light outside in evening, you know, in those times, the crime rates get really low. If you add security infrastructure to it, such as cameras and so on, that help trace, you know, street crime and other kinds of violations, that changes it. And I mean, this goes to do with the quality of life, with you know, basic security and many other things. So this is when you talk about the magnitude and the impact of having a high quality energy infrastructure, it changes everything. I mean, it brings the community, it brings the country, region, whatever it is, at a completely different level. And unfortunately, nothing is possible without it, right? So you need to start from the basics, this kind of projects that would also ensure development of road infrastructure, logistics, and whatsoever else. And we see how the countries are changing fast. And I mean, I'll give you a very down-to-earth example. When I was traveling to Africa before the pandemic and right after, I couldn't recognize some of the countries, especially in the southern region, in the east of the continent, because the infrastructure changes were just amazing. I mean, in 3-4 years, it was possible to change the way, you know, the regions were connected, with the new roads being built, new railroads and everything else. And I mean, this is the kind of infrastructure projects that could be looked at once the basic infrastructure, which is energy, is out there. So those plans that were being discussed so many times, like, you know, a railroad all the way from the south to the north and all the way across the continent from west to east. I mean, just think how much profit, how much benefits it could generate for logistics, for people to be able to travel around, for the goods to be able to be transferred. And there is quite a lot of investment coming from China at the moment in terms of that, but it's still not really about connecting north and south, west and east, in order to make sure that that very free trade agreement that was ratified by all of the countries is actually in place in order to ensure internal trade, more of internal connections that would definitely be of mutual benefit for all of the participants. And this is exactly the kind of approach, the kind of cooperation we should be looking at, not you know, making use of other resources, but being able to honestly evaluate own weaknesses, strengths, and bring this, you know, the strong sides to the table, knowing that those could be shared, and being honest and open in terms of talking about weaknesses that could be covered up by partners coming from other countries, for example, under the BRICS umbrella. So this kind of approach would help us understand that we can really benefit if our neighbors benefit. And there is one planet we're all sharing, so it doesn't really make sense to go into destructive scenarios, because there are alternatives that open up at the moment due to technologies being developed and due to the communication type we have right now.
Okay, thank you, Yulia. Unfortunately, we just used the available time, but I want to take this opportunity to thank you all, dear expert, for your insight on this very important topic that seeks to look at the role of energy in driving Africa's industrialization. Thank you so much, Frank YOSSA, from the business head of business development. Thank you, Dr. Julius KEWIR TANGKA, Renewable Energy Laboratory, University of Chang in Cameroon, and MOBLEY. Thank you all for your great insight. I hope that subsequently we're going to discuss more the potentials of energy in transforming Africa and using the Russia-Africa partnership to arrive at this milestone. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I wish you a lovely moment as you stay in the company of programs on For You Media Africa. Bye-bye.